God-level duplication system. Chapter 181. Not gold, not silver. Under Lin Xuan's falling, Lotus Sword Ray, Yi Li's full-powered strike had actually shattered. The power of the incredibly sharp falling Lotus Sword Ray dropped by more than half, but it kept moving forward. Blood splashed out. Yi Li was sent flying 100 meters away. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his aura weakened. He had suffered quite a severe injury. Lin Xuan still had a calm expression on his face. He slowly withdrew his sword as if he had just done something insignificant. A few hundred meters behind them, Lu Qiannia and Chen Hanchuang were stunned once again. They did not expect that they could not even withstand the aftershock of Yi Li's all-out attack. Not only did Lin Xuan shatter the blade light, but he was also sent flying on the spot. This caused the two of them to be filled with disbelief and shock. At the same time, they had a clearer understanding of Lin Xuan's strength. He was able to defeat Yi Li with a single sword strike. His strength was much stronger than that of most peak spirit opening stage warriors. Lin Xuan was currently at the early spirit opening stage, but he had such strength. This showed how terrifying his talent was. They were both once more astounded by Lin Xuan's talent. This talent was far from what all the warriors in Kangyuan country could compare with. He was at least a master-level genius. Thinking of this, a hint of a smile appeared in their eyes. In the past few hundred years, not a single master-level genius has appeared in the Kangyuan country. Now that Lin Xuan has appeared out of nowhere, perhaps he could change the situation in Kangyuan country. Both of them were the inheritors of their respective sects, so they were naturally happy about this. Yi Li was shocked to the extreme. He had never expected that his all-out attack would be so vulnerable in front of Lin Xuan. His strength was much stronger than his. Although he wasn't sure if he had hidden his cultivation base, his talent was shocking enough. He never thought that another master-level genius would appear in the Scorching Sun domain. Yi Li was shocked, and he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. However, he didn't have the time to think about it anymore. If he stayed any longer, he might die. Immediately, Yi Li turned around and stood up. His chi suddenly soared. He circulated his movement technique and turned into an afterimage as he left. 100 meters away from him, Xu Guangzhen's body was covered in blood, and he fell to the ground. He was already dead. Looking at this scene, the people on the scene understood what had happened. He actually used his fellow disciples to block the attack. He's despicable. He's so ruthless. Chen Hanchuang and Lu Qiannia's expressions were cold, and they couldn't help but curse. Lin Xuan's expression turned cold when he saw this. He didn't expect that someone would sacrifice his fellow disciples to protect himself. If such a person wasn't eliminated, there might be future troubles. Senior brother Lu, I'll go and get rid of this person first. We will talk when we have the chance in the future. After saying that, Lin Xuan chased after Yi Li. Lu Qiannia and Chen Hanchuang came back to their senses. They looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They were unable to clearly see the movements of Lin Xuan and Yi Li. After that, they packed up and left the area. More than half an hour later, a streak of light flew past and landed on a small hill, turning into a slender figure. As expected, I didn't find him. Lin Xuan murmured, a bitter smile on his face. He could easily crush most peak spirit opening stage warriors. But in fact, this was only the effect of increasing his strength. He relied on the golden scale barbaric elephant arts, which had reached the beginner level. As for himself, he had only reached the spirit opening stage level 2. Even though his talent was extremely high, he still had a lot of shortcomings compared to Yi Li, who had reached the peak of the spirit opening stage. For example, in terms of movement, technique and speed, he was inferior to Yi Li. In the end, Yi Li escaped. Forget it. After that, Lin Xuan shook his head. He would kill Yi Li next time. In any case, Yi Li wasn't a powerful enemy. After that, Lin Xuan left the place. After that, he continued running forward. He wanted to hunt for the bronze dummies, obtain the crystal, and improve his cultivation base. The cultivation level was the most important. Soon, another hour passed. During this period of time, Lin Xuan dealt with many bronze dummies and obtained some crystals. His cultivation base had increased once again, reaching the peak of spirit opening stage level 2. Lin Xuan nodded his head slightly and a smile flashed across his eyes. He had gained a lot from this trip to the secret realm. Putting other things aside, the advancement of his cultivation base had already satisfied him. If he went into seclusion to cultivate, it would certainly take him a lot of time. And here, he only spent a day's time to complete it. Lin Xuan was naturally very satisfied. After that, Lin Xuan didn't stay any longer and continued hunting for the bronze dummies. At this moment, a weak sound came from a few thousand meters to the west. Lin Xuan pondered for a moment and approached. It didn't take long for him to arrive. Lin Xuan arrived behind a huge rock and took a look. On flat land hundreds of meters away, more than 20 late stage of spirit opening stage warriors were attacking a tall and sturdy puppet. What grade is this puppet? Lin Xuan looked at the puppet with a strange light flashing in his eyes. The puppet that was surrounded was no longer bronze, nor was it black. Instead, it was a color that was neither gold nor silver. It was too strange. What was even more strange was that this puppet was only equivalent to an ordinary peak spirit opening stage. However, under the combined attack of more than 20 late stage of spirit opening stage warriors, not only did it not fall into a disadvantageous position, but it was also actually able to do it with ease. It could even kill a few people from time to time. Its movement technique was extremely fast. Even Lin Xuan was completely unable to detect its movement technique's trajectory. It didn't even have an afterimage. In an instant, it changed its position. It was like teleportation. A flash of lightning flashed across Lin Xuan's mind, and his heart trembled. He thought for a moment, and the attribute panel of the puppet appeared in front of him. He looked at its attribute panel. In an instant, Lin Xuan's pupils shrank, and he was stunned. Chapter 182. Spatial Talent. Name: Li Wuxian. Cultivation: Peak Spirit Opening Stage Talent. Profound Grade Cultivation Talent, Superior Grade Strength Talent, Superior Grade Speed Talent, and Superior Grade Saber Talent. Superior Grade Violent Wind Attribute Talent, Top Grade Sharp Gold Talent, Top Grade Crimson Fire Talent, and Top Grade Green Wood Attribute Talent. Superior Grade Earth Talent, Top Grade Heavy Water Talent, Substandard Spatial Talent. Martial Skill: Mountain Quake Fist, High Rank 7, Great Completion Treasure. None. The attribute panel of this strange puppet appeared in Lin Xuan's sight. Lin Xuan's eyes swept across its attribute panel. In a split second, Lin Xuan couldn't help but be shocked. He was about to lose control of himself. Although the various talents of this attribute panel surpassed all the martial artists he had seen so far, but these were not important. What was enormously important was that there was a spatial talent to it. That's right, it was a spatial talent. Lin Xuan only came back to his senses after a few breaths. Only after he confirmed again and again did he realize that he had not seen wrongly. It really was a spatial talent. It was true. Lin Xuan could not calm down for a long time. Space and time were the most important. These were the two supreme level laws. They were eternal and indestructible. They were existences that stood above the myriad of laws. They only existed in legend. Lin Xuan had never thought that he would meet the legendary spatial talent here. No wonder this strange puppet could teleport. It didn't even leave behind an afterimage. It seemed like this was the effect of the spatial talent. Lin Xuan only calmed down a little after a while. His heart was also filled with endless ecstasy. This was the legendary spatial talent. Even if it was only substandard, so what? How could a weapon related to space be an ordinary item? He would never let it go. Lin Xuan clenched his fists and thought to himself. His expression was also incomparably solemn. His eyes were fixed on the non-gold and silver puppet. Currently, he still has over 2 million energy points in his possession. If he missed this opportunity, he didn't know how long he would have to wait for the next time. He naturally needed to seize this opportunity. However, Lin Xuan didn't lose his mind because of his impulsive actions. This non-metal, non-silver puppet was equivalent to a peak spirit opening stage warrior. It had the innate ability of space, and its other innate abilities far exceeded those of most spirit opening stage warriors. He predicted that even a peak spirit opening stage genius like Yi Li would perish from it in an instant. Even with the golden scale barbaric elephant arts, Lin Xuan's physique was stronger than the other spirit opening stage warriors. Even if he received a punch from it, he wouldn't feel good if he was the target of it. Lin Xuan pondered for a while before he had an idea. After reducing his aura to an ordinary spirit opening stage level 2, he walked over. His movement wasn't small. However, the weakest among the warriors present was, at least at the late stage of the spirit opening stage. They were still trying their best to deal with this puppet, which was neither gold nor silver. It was at the peak of the spirit opening stage and had a strange movement technique. No one paid any attention to Lin Xuan, who was only at the spirit opening stage level 2. Lin Xuan was within 10 meters of it, and it seemed like he was about to attack. The power that an ordinary spirit at opening stage level 2 could unleash was comparable to this sword light. No one paid any attention to him. The power of all the warriors present crushed the non-golden and silver puppet before the sword light even touched it. The non-gold and non-silver puppets ignored Lin Xuan. A trace of joy flashed across the depths of Lin Xuan's eyes. Sure enough, his guess was right. Although this non-gold and silver puppet seemed to be extraordinary, its innate talent was also extremely high. In fact, it even had legendary spatial talent. However, it still had no intelligence, just like the other bronze puppets. Ordinary spirit opening stage level 2 wouldn't be able to threaten it. It naturally wouldn't bother such people. It chose to deal with the rest of the late stage of spirit opening stage warriors first. He could use this opportunity to replicate his talent when he was within 10 meters of it. Lin Xuan didn't delay any longer. A thought passed through his mind. Duplication failed. Duplication failed. After several consecutive failures, Lin Xuan became more and more upset. Only now did he realize that this substandard spatial talent was theoretically a substandard talent and was considered a first-grade treasure. However, using 200 energy points and even 10,000 energy points, he had always failed to replicate it. Obviously, he needed to replicate the energy points, which were far beyond the first order. Regarding this, although Lin Xuan was a little surprised, he could still accept it. After all, it was a supreme level law. It was normal for there to be some special aspects. After which, he continued to add fuel to the fire. In another instant, I consumed 200,000 energy points. Duplicated successfully. Obtained substandard spatial talent. In the end, he used up 200,000 energy points that could duplicate a rank 8 treasure before duplicating a substandard spatial talent that was theoretically only in the first grade. Compared to the other first-grade treasures, the consumption of energy points was more than 10,000 times higher. Lin Xuan also sighed in his heart. As expected of a legendary existence, extraordinary indeed. He could tell from this point alone. However, Lin Xuan wasn't the least bit depressed. On the contrary, he was delighted. He had finally gotten it. This was a spatial talent, and it involved the 2 legendary supreme level laws. He had plenty of energy points in his possession. Even if he needed more energy points, he was willing to do so. That was because he could still earn more after the energy points were gone. If he lost the chance to duplicate the space talent, then it would be extremely difficult to meet it again. A look of wild joy flashed across Lin Xuan's eyes. He had finally obtained a treasure. Next. Naturally, he couldn't let go of the other talents. With a single thought, I consumed 200,000 energy points. Duplicated successfully. Obtained profound grade cultivation, talent consumed 30,000 energy points, duplicated successfully, and obtained superior grade ability talent. I consumed 30,000 energy points. Duplicated successfully. Obtained superior grade violent, wind attribute talent in the blink of an eye. He had duplicated the treasure on this non-gold and silver puppet. Lin Xuan nodded slightly, his eyes filled with satisfaction. He then turned to look at the people who were engaged in an intense battle, not far away from him. His expression changed, as if he were unwilling to accept it, but at the same time, he was also afraid. He quickly turned around and used his movement technique. With the fastest speed of a spirit opening stage level 2, he ran backwards. In the eyes of the others, this was just an ordinary spirit opening stage level 2 warrior, and he was so scared that he ran away. No one paid any attention to him or the silver puppet. Very quickly, Lin Xuan left and disappeared from everyone's line of sight. On the other side, Lin Xuan was at least a few thousand meters away. After memorizing the location, he no longer held back his speed and rushed forward at full speed. Chapter 183. Instant Transportation. Lin Xuan's plan was to stay far away from this area. What he needed to do next was absorb all kinds of treasures that he had duplicated. There was also substandard spatial talent among them. He still didn't know what would happen. In order to prevent any accidents, he found an unsafe peak before using it. About half an hour later, Lin Xuan came to an empty cave and sat down with his legs crossed. He blocked the entrance with a large rock. Immediately, he chose to use it. In an instant, a surge of warm current surged through Lin Xuan's entire body. He felt a slight swelling sensation. Fortunately, his golden scale barbaric elephant arts had reached the beginner level, and the strength of his body had far exceeded that of a spirit opening stage at the same level. He could still bear it. The time slowly passed. Lin Xuan's aura was also gradually increasing. During this period of time, the cold system notification kept sounding out. Congratulations to host for advancing to the spirit grade speed talent. Congratulations to host for breaking through to the spirit grade earth talent. Congratulations to host for advancing to the substandard. Soon, another half an hour had passed. Lin Xuan slowly opened his eyes. He looked at the void in front of him and saw that his attribute panel had changed a lot. He nodded slightly and smiled. In the next moment, Lin Xuan disappeared into the cave. At the same time, he appeared outside the cave. This is the only effect of the substandard spatial talent of teleportation. Lin Xuan murmured in his heart, and his eyes sparkled. After absorbing this substandard spatial talent, he naturally knew the effect of this talent. Perhaps it was because his grade was too low, but this was the only function of this spatial talent. That was teleportation. Within 10 meters, he could instantly teleport in any direction. Lin Xuan could teleport about 100 times a day. If he used teleportation too many times, his spirit and physique would not be able to withstand it. Lin Xuan was already very satisfied with these. If he used teleportation well, not to mention instantly killing those of the same level, he could easily kill a martial artist of a higher level. For example, if he met an early spiritual essence stage opponent, although he wasn't a match for anyone else, if he could use teleportation to launch a sneak attack with just a few punches, even a spiritual essence stage warrior would have to die. This was the scariness of spatial talent. However, the weakness of teleportation was also very obvious. It was simple for others to target you. Therefore, if he wasn't forced to, it was best not to expose this talent. If he really used this talent, he would get rid of all the witnesses. Lin Xuan thought to himself. He would temporarily use this substandard spatial talent as his biggest trump card. First, he would hide his substandard spatial talent. When the time was right, he would use this talent. At that time, he might be able to turn the tables and kill them all. After that, Lin Xuan calmed down. He circulated his magic and quickly left the place. He headed straight to the place where the non-gold and silver puppet was. That was a puppet that was comparable to a peak spirit opening stage. If he could kill it, the crystal he obtained from it would be exceptionally good. The crystal he obtained would probably be enough for him to break through to the spirit opening stage level 3. Besides, that puppet had the innate ability to sense space. Perhaps the crystal it produced had another function. Lin Xuan naturally couldn't miss this opportunity. Now that he had the ability to teleport, he could deal with that non-gold and non-silver puppet. To him, it was no different than any other peak spirit opening stage bronze dummies. Of course, he wasn't afraid of it. He used another half an hour. Lin Xuan returned to the golden and silver puppets. He and the 20+ late stage of spirit opening stage warriors were on the plain. At this moment, there was no one here, only a large amount of blood and a dozen corpses were left. The war should have ended. The 20 warriors were either killed on the spot by the dummies or escaped. Lin Xuan was not surprised by this either. That non-gold and silver puppet had the innate ability to sense space. It could teleport. Plus, it was a dummy, so it couldn't feel pain at all. That was why it dared to use its innate ability recklessly. It was obviously not something that more than 20 late-stage spirit opening stage warriors could surround and kill. After Lin Xuan scanned the area, he randomly chose a direction to search. This level 1 seemed to be endless. He also couldn't find the next entrance. He was looking for the bronze puppet here. After killing it, he would obtain the crystal and increase his cultivation base. A few more minutes passed. Suddenly, Lin Xuan's expression froze and he stopped. In an instant, an explosive sound resounded in Lin Xuan's ears. A fist that wasn't made of gold or silver appeared beside Lin Xuan and it ripped apart a large part of the air as it smashed towards Lin Xuan. The first force was brutal. It was extremely powerful. This punch would seriously injure even a typical peak spirit opening stage warrior. However, Lin Xuan, who was only a spirit opening stage level 2, still had a calm expression on his face, and there was no change in his expression. He stretched out his hand and grabbed it. A loud, explosive sound was heard. Layers of air waves were created. Lin Xuan was still standing in the same spot, unharmed. Lin Xuan was able to avoid this strong punch. "You're finally here. I've been waiting for you." Lin Xuan laughed lightly. His left hand was holding the right fist of the non-gold and silver dummies. He clenched his right hand into a fist and punched out. In an instant, the air was filled with layers of explosions. This friction produced sparks, which were the embodiment of extreme power. An ear-splitting explosion was heard. A fist print appeared on the chest of the non-gold and silver puppet, and it was sent, flying dozens of meters away. After that, the puppet's body flashed and disappeared from where it was standing. It then charged at Lin Xuan from another direction. However, Lin Xuan seemed to have expected this. He threw another punch at the puppet. Explosions kept sounding out from the void. The puppet, which was neither made of gold nor silver, was sent flying again and again. Its chest was caved in. The chi of the puppet was also weakened at an extremely fast speed. Lin Xuan, on the other hand, had an indifferent expression from the beginning to the end, as if nothing had happened. He can actually suppress that non-gold and non-silver puppet to the point that it can't fight back. So strong. Which major power's top genius has such tyrannical strength? He is much stronger than Sun Yuan, Lu Qiannia, and the others. That's right. At that time, there were more than 20 of us ready to attack it, but the dummies killed us all until there were only 3 of us left. But now he has actually suppressed the dummies. He's too strong. A few hundred meters to the west, behind a small hill, the 3 of them were watching the scene of Lin Xuan fighting the non-metallic puppet from afar. They couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Among the 3 of them, one was at the peak of the spirit opening stage, and the other 2 were at the late stage of the spirit opening stage. All of them were seriously injured. They were the only survivors among the 20 or so people who attacked the non-gold and silver puppets. They had originally been recuperating not too far away. When they heard the commotion, they approached. When they saw this scene, they were all stunned. They stood rooted to the ground, their eyes filled with disbelief. After a while, they came back to their senses and couldn't help but cry out in alarm. The extreme shock in their hearts still didn't diminish in the slightest. Chapter 184. Level 3. The 3 of them were so shocked that they almost couldn't control them anymore. It had to be known that more than 20 of them had attacked this non-gold and silver puppet together. Among them, the weakest was at the late stage of the spirit opening stage, and the other 3 were at the peak of the spirit opening stage. What was the result? Only the 3 of them managed to escape with their injuries when they saw the unfavorable situation. As for the rest, they all died on the spot. It was imaginable how powerful this non-gold and silver puppet was. It was definitely stronger than most peak spirit opening stage warriors. They estimated that Sun Yuan, Chen Hanchuang, Lu Qiannia, and the others who were ranked in the top 10 of the potential role in Kangyuan country were far from being a match for this non-gold and silver puppet. But now, a single person can easily subdue this non-gold and silver puppet. The gap between them was unimaginable. How could they not be shocked? Also, they were all spirit opening stage warriors, but he was so young, so it was obvious that he wasn't even 20 years old. He was far younger than them, yet he was able to display a terrifying strength that far exceeded theirs. This also meant that his talent in martial arts was so high that it far surpassed theirs. This practically exceeded the scope of their imagination. They were even more shocked by his talent. Perhaps no one in the entire Kangyuan country could compare with his talent. Even in the entire Scorching Sun domain, he was one of the top inhabitants. But why had they never heard about him? This was the first time they had seen his face. Could it be that a hidden top genius from a large sect had appeared? His talent was not far from master level. Thinking of this, the three of them were even more shocked. Their eyes also flashed with admiration and respect. The four young masters were ranked at the top of the Scorching Sun domain. Now, they were all spiritual essence stage warriors. In the future, they would definitely become the top entity in the Scorching Sun domain. This was far beyond their imagination. And now, a man who could become a master had appeared in front of them. This naturally shocked them. They paid no attention to the fact that the cultivation base he had revealed was only a spirit opening stage level 2. From their point of view, he was definitely hiding his cultivation base on purpose. Otherwise, with his spirit opening stage level 2 cultivation base, if he could crush a peak spirit opening stage non-gold and silver puppet, wouldn't that be too shocking? Even the four young masters wouldn't be able to do it. They naturally couldn't believe it. A few hundred meters away, another deafening explosion spread out, setting off a large amount of smoke and dust. The puppet was sent flying once again, smashing a huge crater, several meters deep into the ground. This time, the puppet could no longer stand up. It had already lost all signs of life. However, most of its chest had caved in, making it look quite frightening. Lin Xuan looked at the puppet in the big pit, and let out a long breath. I finally defeated it. This was indeed a strange puppet that had legendary spatial talent. This was far from what the other bronze puppets could compare to. He didn't intend to unleash the true power of the golden scale barbaric elephant arts in one go. He took a little more time to defeat it. However, this was nothing. Besides, he had also gained something. It was related to his spatial talent. Spatial fluctuations. After obtaining the substandard spatial talent, Lin Xuan finally realized that not only did he have the ability to teleport, but he could also sense spatial fluctuations that were even sharper. From the beginning to the end, he might not have used teleportation in this battle. Every time, he was able to accurately decide the direction of the puppet's attack and respond in time because he had sensed the spatial fluctuations. And he could even sense spatial fluctuations, so he could naturally sense other changes as well. This also meant that no one else would be able to launch a sneak attack on him. Not to mention other things, at least not even spirit opening stage and spiritual essence stage warriors could launch a sneak attack on him. Lin Xuan also slightly nodded his head. He was quite happy. Then, with a flash, he appeared next to the non-gold and silver puppet that had lost its chi. Lin Xuan reached out his hand and grabbed the crystal. He glanced to the west before activating his magic. After that, he flew away. He could naturally see that there were 3 people watching him from hundreds of meters to the west. The attribute panel of those 3 people had also appeared in his sight. However, these 3 people were not even comparable to Xu Anlin, let alone Chen Hanchuang, Lu Qianya, and the others. In addition, during this battle, Lin Xuan had never used his spatial talent. Of course, he didn't have to worry about anything. Furthermore, after the 3 of them left, they would help him spread the news, and he would also be able to obtain some energy points. They weren't bothering Lin Xuan in any way. What Lin Xuan didn't know was that this glance of his had scared the 3 of them half to death. To the 3 of them, Lin Xuan was an existence that could kill non-gold and silver dummies with brute force. Even if he was weaker than a spiritual essence stage warrior, he was still not that far off. In the puppet's secret realm, he was an invincible existence. When one looked at Lin Xuan, it appeared as though a mountain tens of thousands of meters high was crushing Lin Xuan. He almost caused their vitality to freeze and their hearts to stop beating. The 3 of them were even more shocked by Lin Xuan's strength. Lin Xuan's gaze made them feel as if they were facing a great enemy. They were almost powerless to resist. It could be seen that Lin Xuan's strength was extraordinarily strong. On the other side, Lin Xuan had left the area where the 3 of them were. After making sure that there was no one around, he found a relatively hidden place. He took out the crystal he had obtained from the puppet, which was neither gold nor silver. This crystal was different from the one he had obtained before. It had a trace of a non-metallic color. Lin Xuan's eyes were fixed on the crystal, and there was a glint in his eyes. Then he slightly exerted force with his fingers. A crisp sound was heard. A cool stream that was far more vigorous and refreshing than the crystal he had obtained earlier poured into Lin Xuan's body from his fingertips. At the same time, Lin Xuan's aura also increased rapidly. A few minutes later, congratulations. Host's spatial talent has increased. A cold voice sounded. Lin Xuan also woke up and slightly nodded his head. I have broken through to the spirit opening stage level 3. Also, my spatial talent has improved a lot. My teleportation is still within 10 meters, but the number of times I use it every day has increased to over 200 times. Lin Xuan muttered in his heart, his eyes filled with satisfaction. Very quickly, he calmed himself down. Lin Xuan intended to continue hunting the bronze dummies. At this moment, Lin Xuan's expression suddenly became serious. A strange fluctuation swept over. Spatial fluctuation. Lin Xuan's heart sank. However, this fluctuation came too quickly. He only needed to sense it, and it had already arrived. Furthermore, this fluctuation covered an exceptionally large area, so even his teleportation couldn't affect it. This fluctuation engulfed Lin Xuan in the following instant. Lin Xuan's vision blurred, and he felt as if the world was spinning and time was reversed. He looked around once again. It was as if this was another completely different scene. Level 3. Chapter 185. Meet Up. Level 3. Lin Xuan looked at the scene in front of him and murmured. At this moment, what he saw was a vast, flat land. This flat land was only a few thousand meters. There were hundreds of martial artists scattered around. The weakest of them were spirit opening stage warriors. These people had obviously come much earlier than him. It seems like this place should be the number 1 level 3 in the puppet secret realm. I think many of them have found the entrance. As for me, I was only sent here when the time was up and the conditions were met. Lin Xuan watched as the air fluctuated from time to time, and then one more martial practitioner appeared. These martial practitioners were at least at the late stage of the spirit opening stage. Lin Xuan also understood. Senior brother Lin. Lin. At this moment, Lin Xuan heard several shouts. Lin Xuan looked over and saw Lu Qianye, Chen Hanquang, Zhang Meng, and the other true disciples of the 5 major powers of Kangyuan country walking towards him. Senior brother Lu, Miss Chen, junior brother Shu. Lin Xuan smiled and replied. Senior brother Lin, you are finally here. I thought something happened to you when you were at level 2. Lu Qianye looked at Lin Xuan and said it with a smile on his face. Although he was the elite senior brother of the Drifting Cloud sect, he had seen Lin Xuan's terrifying strength and frightening talent. He knew that he was far from being able to compare with Lin Xuan. However, he was also willing to call Lin Xuan senior brother Lin. When the true disciples of the Drifting Cloud sect behind Lu Qianye saw this, all of them were stunned. Only now have they confirmed that what Shu Anlin said about Lin Xuan was true. Even these rumors were far from enough. This was something that even the proud eldest, senior brother had taken the initiative to call Lin Xuan senior brother. It could be seen that Lin Xuan's strength had at least surpassed Lu Qianye's. All the disciples were even more shocked. Lin, you can just call my little sister Hanquang. Chen Hanquang also had a smile on his face as he replied. Her eyes flashed with extraordinary splendor. She had seen Lin Xuan in action before, so she had to admit that he was immensely powerful. Lin Xuan was the number 1 genius she had ever seen. He was strong enough to rank at the master level. If it weren't for the fact that he was still young, and had only been cultivating for a brief period of time, he might even be stronger than the 4 young masters. She was astounded by Lin Xuan's strength as well. In addition, Lin Xuan was also extraordinarily handsome, and his appearance far exceeded anyone she had ever seen. Even though she didn't put any men in her eyes, she couldn't help but look at him. Lin Xuan nodded. He responded calmly and then looked at a handsome young man next to Lu Qianye with a trace of dominance. Who is this? By the way, senior brother Lin, he is the crown prince of the Kangyuan country's royal family, Sun Yuan. He is also the current number 1 person on the potential roll. Lu Qianye quickly introduced him to Lin Xuan. His figure was slightly smaller than Sun Yuan's. It could be seen that Sun Yuan was immensely powerful. I dare not accept it. If what Lu said is true, The position of first on the potential role ranking might be shifted. Sun Yuan replied in a seemingly modest manner. He looked at Lin Xuan again, and said it with some fighting spirit. This must be the #1 genius of the Drifting Cloud sect, Lin Xuan, right? As the rumor said, your talent is extraordinary, and your strength is formidable. Sun Yuan said, and then he gripped the treasured saber in his hand. His expression turned incomparably solemn. Although he didn't really believe what Lu Qianye and Chen Hanchuang said, Lin Xuan's chi was only at the early spirit opening stage. However, he didn't dare underestimate Lin Xuan. Because he could feel pressure coming from Lin Xuan's body. That was the feeling of facing a strong enemy. The pressure coming from Lin Xuan was so strong that it even surpassed all the strong enemies he had faced before. This kind of pressure made him even more shocked. He did not dare underestimate Lin Xuan's ability at all. First rank of the potential role ranking? I'm not interested. Lin Xuan's expression remained indifferent when he heard this. He did not care at all. He had heard of Sun Yuan's name before. He was the #1 genius of the Kangyuan country, the crown prince of the royal family, and ranked first on the potential role rankings. And now Lin Xuan had seen Sun Yuan with his own eyes. Lin Xuan looked at the attribute panel that only slightly surpassed Chen Hanchuang, Lu Qianye, and the others. It was difficult for Lin Xuan's heart to have even the slightest ripple. Such a so-called top genius of the Kangyuan country was no longer worth mentioning in Lin Xuan's eyes. He had far surpassed Sun Yuan. If he wanted to, he could kill Sun Yuan with a single punch, leaving him with no strength to resist. Lin Xuan was totally incomparable to him. He couldn't be bothered to make a fuss about it. Lin Xuan's true opponent was no longer in the Kangyuan country. It was the entire Scorching Sun domain and even the 4 young masters of the Scorching Sun domain. After a while, he was thinking about leaving the Scorching Sun domain. His talent and potential had already risen to the top level of the Scorching Sun domain. It was estimated that it would be difficult for him to replicate any higher grade treasures to increase his talent and potential. Lin Xuan wanted to keep and even improve his cultivation base faster. He wanted to reach a higher level of martial arts achievement. He wanted to achieve that goal in his heart. It was also time for him to leave the Scorching Sun domain and head to the wider martial arts world. Compared to the outside world, the Scorching Sun domain was merely a small pond. The Scorching Sun domain could not raise a true dragon. The Kangyuan country was even smaller. Lin Xuan naturally didn't want to pay any more attention to the reputation of the potential role in the Kangyuan country. However, he didn't need to do anything about it. He believed that after this trip to Puppet's Secret Realm ended, his performance in Secret Realm would spread. His actions would shake the entire Scorching Sun domain. At that time, he would be able to inject a large amount of energy into his body. Senior brother Lin, what happened to you at level 2? Why did you arrive at level 3 so late? Lu Qianye asked. Lu Qianye dispersed the heavy atmosphere in an instant. Seeing this, Sun Yuan heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. He withdrew his fighting spirit. He had no confidence in defeating Lin Xuan in the first place. As the #1 junior disciple of Kangyuan country, he had to show a strong attitude when facing a new top genius like Lin Xuan. Otherwise, he would attract countless rumors, which would damage his reputation. After he expressed his fighting spirit, Lin Xuan remained calm and unmoved. This made him even more fearful, and he no longer dared to rashly issue a challenge. The current situation wasn't too bad either. Lu Qianye had helped him out. I'm going to hunt for the bronze dummies at level 2. Lin Xuan replied with an indifferent tone. He didn't say anything else. He had also obtained a spatial talent at level 2. This was his biggest trump card at the moment. He naturally couldn't let any news out. We also went to hunt a few bronze puppets earlier. Those bronze puppets can produce special crystals to directly increase the cultivation base. But the bronze puppet's defense is too high, killing it takes a lot of time and effort. We gave up. So, we found the level 3 beginner level, and after that, we were teleported here. Lu Qianye nodded and replied. Suddenly, Lu Qianye's expression froze, and he looked at Lin Xuan with a look of disbelief. Senior brother Lin, you're a spirit opening stage level 3. Only now did he realize that Lin Xuan's chi had actually reached the spirit opening stage level 3. I just broke through. Lin Xuan replied. As soon as he finished his words, everyone on the scene was stunned. Chapter 186. Shock. Lin Xuan's words stunned many people on the scene. Lu Qianye, Chen Hanchuang, Xu Anlin and the others were all shocked. They looked at Lin Xuan in disbelief. They knew that Lin Xuan had only reached condensation, spin stage level 8 in the ranking competition of the strong list in Drifting Cloud sect not long ago. When the Puppet Secret Realm opened, Lin Xuan had already broken through to the Spirit opening stage. His cultivation speed was already amazingly fast, and no one in the Kangyuan country could match him. However, when they thought about Lin Xuan's terrifying talent in martial arts, they could barely accept it. However, they did not expect Lin Xuan to break through again and again in just a few hours after he entered the Puppet Secret Realm. He had broken through 2 levels, from the Spirit opening stage level 1 to the Spirit opening stage level 3. The speed of his breakthrough this time was really frightening. In the Puppet Secret Realm, the treasure that could allow one's cultivation base to improve rapidly was the crystal that they had obtained after killing the bronze puppet. Many people have already tried this. It only took Lin Xuan a few hours to break through 2 levels. One could imagine how many bronze dummies Lin Xuan had taken care of in these few hours. 100, a few hundred, or even more. They didn't dare to imagine it. They had a deep understanding of how difficult it was to deal with bronze puppets. Ordinary bronze puppets were comparable to late-stage Spirit opening stage warriors. Their bodies were as hard as steel. They could easily repel the bronze dummies, but even a peak Spirit opening stage warrior wouldn't be able to condense a crystal out of them. Not to mention, there were also many bronze dummies that were equivalent to a peak Spirit opening stage. That was why Lu Qianye, Chen Hanchuang, Sun Yuan, and the other top geniuses of Kangyuan country had given up on killing the bronze dummies. They chose to search for the entrance and came to level 3. However, in just a few hours' time, Lin Xuan had killed all the bronze dummies, obtained their crystal cores, and improved his cultivation base by 2 levels. In comparison, Lin Xuan's strength was even more terrifying. Even Lu Qianye and Chen Hanchuang, who had seen Lin Xuan's attack, were shocked. Not to mention the others. They were all stunned and couldn't come back to their senses for a long time. When Sun Yuan heard this, he was also shocked. Those bronze dummies had strong bodies and strong defenses. He could also feel them. Even if it were him, it wouldn't be easy for him to kill a bronze dummy. However, Lin Xuan had killed a large number of bronze dummies, obtained their crystals, and improved his cultivation base. Lin Xuan's strength had definitely far exceeded his. Sun Yuan was incomparably shocked. At the same time, he felt lucky that Lin Xuan didn't accept his challenge. Otherwise, the one who would lose face would be him. On the other hand, Lin Xuan's expression was indifferent, as if he didn't care about it. He looked into the distance. Besides the disciples of the 5 major powers of Kangyuan country, there were also many rogue cultivators and disciples from the other major powers of Scorching Sun domain. In the distance, a few figures were walking towards them. I've finally found you. Now, my senior brother, Duan, is here. Let's see how you die this time. The leader was Yi Li. After discovering Lin Xuan, his footsteps became much faster. With a cruel smile on his face, he shouted coldly. When the surrounding martial practitioners heard this, fear appeared on their faces, and they all retreated. All the disciples of Kangyuan country trembled, and their hearts were greatly shaken. Senior brother Lin, Duan Fakin, is the second senior brother of Wind Flame Valley. He is reputed to be one of the top geniuses of Scorching Sun domain, besides the 4 young masters. Lu Qianye quickly explained it to Lin Xuan. He knew that Lin Xuan had just left the sect not long ago, so he might not know about the situation in the Scorching Sun domain. He was worried that Lin Xuan would suffer a loss. Lin Xuan nodded slightly and said coldly, "Looks like the lesson I taught you last time was not enough." He actually dared to provoke him. "This time, you will die. You still dare to be arrogant? Senior brother Duan will definitely make you beg for mercy later." When Yi Li heard this, his face turned ashen as he shouted. Although he was extremely angry, the power of Lin Xuan's sword strike had made him extremely fearful, and he didn't dare to step forward. When the surrounding people heard this, they were all incomparably shocked. The underlying meaning of these words was that Lin Xuan had previously defeated Yi Li. Although Yi Li couldn't be compared to the 4 young masters and Duan Fakin, he wasn't weak at all. He was one of the top geniuses in the entire Scorching Sun domain. He was much stronger than Liu Qianye, Sun Yuan, and the others. This disciple from Kangyuan country, who was obviously under 20 years old, had actually taught him a lesson. This matter was truly unbelievable. Die. Lin Xuan didn't want to waste any more time talking. He stretched out his hand and grabbed a sword. Falling Lotus. He shouted in a deep voice and swung his sword. A cold light shot out and turned into a snow-white lotus. The lotus flower bloomed into 12 petals and split into 12 swords, shooting towards Yi Li. It was as if the void had been pierced through. Lin Xuan's cultivation base had increased. After obtaining the spatial talent, his strength increased by a large margin. The sharpness of this sword, qi, also far surpassed the earlier ones. The sword qi cut through the air in all directions until it was completely shattered. Everyone in the surroundings, including Sun Yuan, Chen Hanchuang, Liu Qianye, and the other disciples of Kangyuan country, felt a sharp pain on their skin. They were shocked, and they couldn't help but retreat. They had to retreat a few hundred meters before they could barely bear it. The way they looked at Lin Xuan was even more shocking. Putting everything else aside, the sharpness of this sword, qi, was extremely terrifying. One could imagine just what level his true strength had reached. Everyone was extremely shocked. The 12-sword qi arrived in front of Yi Li in an instant and attacked him. Damn it! How dare he! Yi Li's facial expression changed dramatically. He looked at the 12-sword lights in disbelief. He had never thought that Duan Faya would be here. Lin Xuan had actually attacked him. Wasn't Lin Xuan afraid that senior brother Duan would attack him? In his point of view, Lin Xuan was absolutely no match for senior brother Duan. Was Lin Xuan not afraid of death? But at this moment, he didn't have the time to think too much. 12 swordsmen from Qi descended. A deadly sense of danger attacked him. He couldn't help but tremble, and his hair stood on end. Only now did Yi Li realize that Lin Xuan had used the same sword technique this time, but the power of the sword qi was several times stronger than before. It had only been a few hours since they last saw each other, but Lin Xuan's strength had once again increased by so much. He was even more shocked. But this time, Lin Xuan attacked in an instant, like a sneak attack. It was impossible for him to predict this. Chapter 187. The sword cut Yi Li. Lin Xuan's strength had already far exceeded Yi Li's, so he launched another sneak attack. It was impossible for Yi Li to dodge the attack. At this moment, Yi Li felt his heart tremble, and his scalp went numb. The sharp edge of the blade made his skin hurt even more, as if countless steel knives had scraped his skin. Only now did he realize that there was a huge gap between him and Lin Xuan. He couldn't even imagine that there would be such an enormous difference between them. And he was actually recklessly provoking Lin Xuan. Fear couldn't help but flash across Yi Li's eyes. With his strength, even if he were weaker than senior brother Duan, he wouldn't be too far off. How could he be a match for Lin Xuan? But at this moment, he had no way to dodge. He could only block. He did not ask for any injuries. He only wanted to save his life. This is his only request right now. As long as he could save his life, he believed that senior brother Duan would rush over and take revenge for him. When he thought of this, Yi Li's expression became heavy. He madly circulated his spiritual energy and activated the various concepts. The treasured saber in his hand slashed out. Flame essence explosion. In the face of life and death, Yi Li unleashed his strongest attack. With the help of the saber intent, the artistic conception of wind, the artistic conception of fire, and many other concepts, his power had increased several times. His power turned into a huge blade light that was dozens of meters long, and he rushed towards the 12 falling lotus sword qi. An unparalleled power swept in all directions, bringing with it endless layers of qi waves. This energy sent many of the people on the scene flying away. Even some peak late stage of spirit opening stage warriors couldn't help but retreat. They retreated several hundred meters before stopping. The battle startled everyone who was present. They were astounded to see this. Was this the full strength of the fourth senior brother of Wind Flame Valley, Yi Li? Sure enough, he had far surpassed them. They couldn't even withstand the aftershock. It was clear that he was truly immensely powerful. What shocked them even more was that Yi Li's opponent was a young man who wasn't even 20 years old. The 12 sword lights that this young man slashed out were also extremely sharp, making them unable to look straight at him. A young man was actually able to slash out such a powerful sword. It made Yi Li feel as if he was facing a great enemy, and he unleashed all of his strength. His innate talent was terrifyingly powerful. He reckoned that no one here was a match for him, right? Even if he wasn't as strong as the four young masters, he wasn't far from them. Everyone on the scene was extremely shocked. Their eyes were fixed on this scene. Then, under the gazes of everyone on the scene, the 12 falling lotus swords, chi slashed out by Lin Xuan, landed on the huge blade light that Yi Li had unleashed with all his strength. A sound similar to the sound of metal colliding was heard. The first falling lotus sword chi shattered with a loud bang. The speed of the huge blade light also slowed down. Yi Li didn't even have the time to be happy before he started to worry. Another 3 falling lotus sword chi fell at the same time and shattered. However, cracks also appeared on the huge blade light. Another 2 falling lotus swords chi struck the huge blade light. This time, the huge blade light could no longer withstand it. Cracks that looked like spider webs covered the entire blade of light at an extremely fast speed. Another sword fell, and the huge saber light collapsed in an instant. Then it shattered and turned into countless natural energies that dissipated. The remaining force of the spread in all directions, causing the people on the scene to retreat another 100 meters. Everyone was even more shocked than before on the field. 7 out of the 12 falling lotus sword chi had been shattered, leaving only 5 intact. They continued to attack Yi Li. Only now did Yi Li realize that he had underestimated Lin Xuan's strength. This time, Lin Xuan did not even need to combine the 12 falling lotus sword chi into one. The power of Lin Xuan's attack alone was not something he could withstand. But it was already too late. The remaining 5 falling lotus sword chi seemed to have passed through the void and crashed down. Stop! A few hundred meters to the west, a thunderous roar was heard. This voice echoed throughout the entire level 3. This cry startled many people, causing Vitality to pause for a second. Their eardrums hurt. However, even so, the 5 great falling lotus sword chi did not stop at all. They continued to descend. Yi Li couldn't resist this attack any longer, and his treasured saber was sent flying. The falling lotus sword chi landed on his body and pierced through his body. The falling lotus sword chi pierced through his body and left a lot of bloody holes in it. Yi Li spat out a mouthful of blood, and like a broken cloth bag, he was sent flying 100 meters away. He crashed into the ground, causing a cloud of dust to rise up. His entire body was covered in blood and dirt. Several bloody holes appeared on his body, and blood gushed out like fountains. Yi Li didn't even have the time to scream before he died. Witnessing this scene, everyone fell into silence. Their pupils dilated, and they stood rooted to the ground, their eyes filled with disbelief. After a few seconds, someone finally reacted. After a series of gasps, the audience began to clamor. "I'm not dreaming, am I?" Yi Li from Wind Flame Valley died just like that. Lin Xuan killed him with a single blow. They are both spirit opening stage warriors, but there are still spirit opening stage warriors who can kill Yi Li with a single strike. He is too strong. I think even when the 4 young masters were at the spirit opening stage, they might not be able to do it. He's not even 20 years old yet. Could he be a new generation of master-level geniuses? Everyone was in an uproar. They could hear the cries of shock everywhere. All of their eyes were focused on Lin Xuan, and they were filled with endless shock. No one had ever thought that the 4th senior brother of Wind Flame Valley, Yi Li, who was known as the top genius of Scorching Sun Domain, would actually be defeated here. Furthermore, it wasn't just a simple defeat, he was also killed on the spot. More importantly, Yi Li was killed with a single strike. The murderer was a handsome young man who wasn't even 20 years old. This was a scene that they didn't even dare dream about. But now it has been revealed in front of everyone. They were all immersed in endless shock, and they couldn't believe it no matter what. But it happened right in front of their eyes, and so many people saw it at the same time. They had to believe this. Instantaneously, everyone was even more shocked. They were both shocked by Lin Xuan's strength and his talent. As the 4th senior brother of Wind Flame Valley, Yi Li was one of the top geniuses in the entire Scorching Sun domain. Among all the warriors present, only less than 10 of them could fight him alone. Not to mention killing him with a single strike. But now Lin Xuan has killed Yi Li with a single blow. It could be seen how strong Lin Xuan was. Even if he couldn't be compared to a spiritual essence stage, he was still one of the top spirit opening stage warriors. What shocked everyone even more was that Lin Xuan wasn't even 20 years old, but his strength had already reached such a level. He killed Yi Li with a single sword strike, who was considered to be one of the top geniuses in Scorching Sun domain. It also showed how terrifying his talent was. Chapter 188. Duan Flying Dust. Behind them, the people of Kangyuan country were also shocked to the extreme. As a disciple of one of the 5 major powers of Kangyuan country, the Drifting Cloud sect, Lin Xuan had advanced by leaps and bounds. He was reputed to be the #1 genius of the Drifting Cloud sect. His reputation had spread far and wide. As the true disciples of the 5 major powers, they had more or less heard about Lin Xuan. Everyone knew that Lin Xuan had only been in the Drifting Cloud sect for 2 months, but he had already become a true disciple. This was already a shocking fact. It had exceeded the unprecedented record of the Kangyuan country. Everyone had only heard of it, but they didn't believe it in their hearts. It was only when they saw the scene today and found out that Lin Xuan had broken through to the spirit opening stage that they were able to confirm that the rumors were true. In an instant, everyone was shocked and couldn't calm down. Lin Xuan's talent could replace Sun Yuan and make him the new #1 genius in the Kangyuan country. He could even be called the #1 genius of Kangyuan country for hundreds of years. However, when they saw this scene, they realized that those rumors had underestimated Lin Xuan. One should know that Yi Li was the true 4th senior brother of Wind Flame Valley. His strength allowed him to easily defeat Sun Yuan. Chen Hanchuang, Lu Qiannia, and the other geniuses of the Kangyuan country had been waiting for the potential role for the past 10 days, but what about now? Lin Xuan, who had recently broken through to the spirit opening stage and had reached the spirit opening stage level 3, defeated Yi Li, who was at the peak of the spirit opening stage. Furthermore, this wasn't a big battle, but an instant kill. It was as if the two of them weren't on the same level. It was as if Lin Xuan was only at the peak of the spirit opening stage, while Yi Li was only at the spirit opening stage level 3. When everyone saw this scene, they were shocked to the extreme. They couldn't believe it. They felt like they were in a dream. This scene was too surreal. After a long time, the crowd finally realized that it was all true. They were instantly overwhelmed with astonishment. Only now did they know that Lin Xuan's talent had exceeded their imagination. He was definitely not only the #1 genius in Kangyuan country. In the entire Scorching Sun domain, his strength could be compared to the 4 young masters, right? In fact, he might even be stronger than them. Thinking of this, the hearts of everyone in the Kangyuan country trembled. At the same time, their hearts were filled with wild joy. The Kangyuan country had always been at a disadvantage in the Scorching Sun domain. If the puppet secret realm this time wasn't found in the Kangyuan country, the major powers of the Kangyuan country might not even have the chance to enter. In the past few hundred years, there has never been a single master-level genius. Now, had a genius finally appeared in the Kangyuan country? Was the Kangyuan country going to rise again? Everyone was trembling with excitement. At this moment, an angry shout that sounded like an explosion of thunder was heard. A terrifying thing might spread out, and it instantly woke everyone up. "Kid, how dare you kill junior disciple Yi Li? Die now." Everyone looked over and saw a young man in red flying towards Lin Xuan with a furious expression on his face. The terrifying might that was emitted from his body caused everyone's hearts to tremble. Their vitality could not help but slow down. When they saw the red-clothed young man's face, everyone's hearts shook. They began to discuss in a deep voice. Duan Fakin is the true 2nd senior brother of the Wind Flame Valley. He is known as one of the top geniuses in the Scorching Sun domain, besides the 4 young masters. I heard that Duan Fakin has a record of fighting a spiritual essence stage 1 with dozens of strikes, without losing. The strength of this Kangyuan country warrior is not bad. He is already extraordinarily strong to be able to kill Yi Li in an instant, but unfortunately, Duan Fakin is here. That's right. He shouldn't be a match for Duan Fakin. However, he isn't weak either. He won't be killed in an instant. He should be able to withstand a few moves, right? Everyone was in an uproar in front of Duan Fakin, who had a great reputation in the Scorching Sun domain. Although Lin Xuan had displayed his strength and battle record, which shocked everyone, no one thought highly of him. Senior brother Lin is Duan Fakin, the second true disciple of the Wind Flame Valley. As for the eldest senior brother of the Wind Flame Valley, he is Chen Feng, one of the disciples of the four young masters. Lin, run. Chen Hanchuang and Lu Qiannia both came back to their senses and hurriedly reminded Lin Xuan. They also did not think that Lin Xuan would be a match for Duan Faia. Lin Xuan, on the other hand, had a calm expression. He waved his hand and didn't take it seriously. He looked at Duan Faia. Name: Duan Fakin. Cultivation: Peak Spirit Opening Stage Talent. Profound Grade Cultivation Talent, Superior Grade Strength Talent, Spirit Grade Speed Talent, Superior Grade Swordplay Talent. Spirit Grade Violent Wind Attribute Talent, Superior Grade Sharp Gold Talent, Superior Grade Crimson Fire Talent, and Top Grade Green Wood Attribute Talent, Top Grade Earth Talent, Top Grade Heavy Water Talent Martial Art. Crimson Flame Wind Spirit Technique, High Rank 7, Great Completion, Myriad Wind Shadow Sword Technique, High Rank 7. Great Completion. Wind and Fire Quake Earth Palm, Mid-Grade Rank 7, Great Completion, and Boundless Meteorite First, Mid-Grade Rank 7. Great Completion, Wind God Shadowless Step, High Rank 7, Great Completion. Concept: 40% Sword Intent, 35% Artistic Conception of Gold, 40% Artistic Conception of Wind, and 30% Artistic Conception of Fire, 20% Artistic Conception of Wood, 20% Artistic Conception of Earth, and 20% Artistic Conception of Water. Treasure: Wind Shadow Sword, Mid-Grade Rank 7, Spirit Weapon. Looking at Duan Fakin's attribute panel in the void in front of him, Lin Xuan's expression changed slightly. This attribute panel of his was indeed worthy of his name. Compared to Sun Yuan, Chen Hanchuang, Lu Qiannia, and the other top geniuses of the Kangyuan country, his attribute panel was much stronger. However, compared to his attribute panel, Duan Fakin's attribute panel was still a lot weaker. Especially after he entered the Puppet Secret Realm, he had duplicated a lot of innate talents, and his innate talent had once again improved. The gap between them was even greater. In addition to that, his cultivation base had also advanced to the Spirit Opening Stage Level 3, and his strength had increased by a lot. If he really unleashed all of his strength, he could even defeat Spirit Opening Stage Level 2 or Level 3 warriors. He was naturally not afraid of Duan Fakin. However, Duan Fakin had a lot of high-grade treasures, and they were the best on the battlefield. He naturally couldn't miss this opportunity. If Duan Fakin got close to him, he would be able to copy them. Lin Xuan stood still and watched Duan Fakin fly over. The rest of the people couldn't help but retreat hundreds of meters away because of Duan Fakin's power. Only Lin Xuan and Duan Fakin were left on the scene. Go to hell. Duan Fakin let out a cold snort. His expression was ice cold, and he was about to attack. Right at this moment, a terrifying rumbling sound was heard, and the entire ground seemed to be shaking. A strange fluctuation spread out, quickly filling the entire area. Lin Xuan's expression became serious. Spatial fluctuation. However, he did not dodge. This spatial undulation spread across the entire scene, and he could not dodge it either. The spatial fluctuation quickly covered everyone and made them disappear. In the next moment, they all gathered on the empty ground to the west. The scene changed once again. Chapter 189. Black Sword. A few meters tall, the stone stand appeared in the east. In the middle of the stone stand was a long, black sword. Because of the spatial fluctuation, everyone had gathered in the open space in the west. They were more than 2,000 meters away from the eastern stone stand. How dare you kill junior brother Yi? I want to avenge him. A shout sounded. Duan Fakin sneered and was about to attack Lin Xuan. At this moment, Duan Fakin felt his body sink and his spirit energy stagnate. Everyone felt the same way. A lot of people fell to the ground before they could steady themselves. What's going on? I suddenly feel that my body is so heavy. The spirit energy in my dantian is unable to circulate anymore. Everyone on the scene discussed it animatedly. Lin Xuan's expression didn't change, but his expression became even more serious. He could feel an even more strange fluctuation in his surroundings. Is this a gravity field? He didn't expect to be able to see a gravitational force field in this world. Lin Xuan's eyes flashed and his expression became serious. This gravitational field came suddenly, and its power wasn't small either. However, it seemed like it was only targeting spirit opening stage warriors. And because he had reached the beginner level with the golden scale barbaric elephant arts, the strength of his body had already surpassed the spirit opening stage level. Even many spiritual essence stage warriors couldn't compare to him. Apart from some surprise, he didn't feel anything else. Around him, Chen Hanchuang, Lu Qiannia, Sun Yuan, and the others couldn't stand stably. Although they had stood stably, their expressions had changed. The rest of the late stage of spirit opening stage disciples were even more embarrassed. Lin Xuan, on the other hand, had a calm expression on his face. He didn't even move as if nothing had happened. Everyone was shocked. Indeed, Lin Xuan's strength was not something they could compare with. Not far away, Duan Fakin was also paying attention to Lin Xuan. He was a little afraid in his heart. However, under such circumstances, Lin Xuan might be more relaxed than him. He could not unleash his full strength, so he could only temporarily give up on attacking Lin Xuan. He could only find another opportunity in the future. Lin Xuan sensed Duan Fakin's gaze and looked over. A faint light flashed in his eyes. This happened to be within the scope of the duplication. He couldn't miss such an opportunity. I consumed 200,000 energy points. Duplication successful. Obtained profound grade cultivation talent. I consumed 100,000 energy points. Duplicated successfully. Obtained spirit grade speed talent. I consumed 100,000 energy points. Duplicated successfully. Obtained spirit grade violent. When attribute talent in an instant, he duplicated all the treasures on Duan Fakin's body. In fact, he only copied all kinds of innate abilities and the Wind Shadow Sword. As for the other martial arts and concepts, he had far surpassed Duan Fakin. Immediately, he chose to use them. A warm current that was like a stream flowed through his entire body. Your cultivation talent has improved. Congratulations. Your speed attribute talent has been enhanced. He absorbed all of the treasures that he had duplicated as the cold voice faded away. Lin Xuan could feel that his strength had increased once again. He nodded his head in satisfaction. He turned to look at the black longsword on the stone stand. The surrounding people also reacted. Although the sudden appearance of the gravitational force field made everyone somewhat embarrassed, in reality, it did not affect them. Everyone quickly recovered their senses. Their gazes were also placed on the stone stand in the east. This should be the last place in the puppet secret realm, right? I don't know, but that black sword should be a treasure. Its grade isn't low. Is there any inheritance of the puppet secret realm here? The person who obtains the sword will most likely obtain the inheritance. Everyone was discussing amongst themselves. Especially the last sentence, which caused the crowd to instantly fall silent. The lowest level of people on the scene was at the spirit opening stage. They were the core disciples of all the major powers, so they weren't idiots. On the contrary, they were all smart people. After hearing this, they at once understood what was going on. Then, everyone stopped talking. They simultaneously rushed towards the eastern stone stand. Charge! This inheritance is mine. No one is allowed to snatch it. You dare to stop me? You are courting death. Many people started to fight in order to stop the others. For a moment, the crowd was in chaos. However, Lin Xuan stood still and remained unmoved. Chen Hanchuang, Sun Yuan, Lu Qiannia, and the other top disciples of Kangyuan country were also eager to give it a try. However, when they saw that Lin Xuan didn't move, they suppressed their urges and waited on the spot. Not far away, Duan Fakin was also leading many disciples of Wind Flame Valley. He didn't move, but he had a cold smile on his face. As expected. Not long after, a lot of people were 1,000 meters away from the stone stand. They began to involuntarily fall to the ground, crying out in pain. Some of the weaker people at once spat out a mouthful of blood. At this moment, another terrifying explosion sounded. The earth trembled once again. This time, it was far more intense than before. The crowd could no longer hold their ground and fell to the ground. Only Lin Xuan and Duan Fakin remained standing. Lin Xuan, in particular, had a calm expression on his face. His body did not move at all, as if he did not feel anything. Many people who were watching Lin Xuan felt their hearts tremble. Duplication staggered and steadied himself. When he saw Lin Xuan's performance, he was shocked. His expression became uglier and uglier. He snorted coldly and didn't say anything else. He became more and more wary of Lin Xuan in his heart. However, Lin Xuan didn't pay any attention to these people. Instead, he shifted his gaze to the front. He saw the spatial fluctuation within a 300-meter radius of the stone stand. After that, many dummies appeared. There were some black iron puppets, some bronze puppets, and a few puppets that weren't made of gold or silver. However, these puppets were like decorations, and they didn't move at all. Their positions were in a mess. They seemed to be guards, but they stood there casually. They were extremely strange. Lin Xuan glanced at them. All of a sudden, his eyes lit up. Chapter 190. Easy to surpass. Although these puppets that suddenly appeared were quite far away from Lin Xuan, his attribute panel had appeared in his line of sight. Among them, there were even a few puppets with spatial talent, half gold and half silver. If Lin Xuan could replicate their substandard spatial talent and fuse it with his own, perhaps he would be able to increase the grade of his spatial talent. Lin Xuan's expression changed dramatically, and his eyes sparkled. Senior brother Lu, Hanchuang, and brother Sun, let's go. If my guess is correct, the black sword should be related to the inheritance of this puppet's secret realm. When we are close to 1,000 meters away, the gravity will increase exponentially. I estimate that the closer we get to that black sword, the greater the increase in gravity. As for those puppets, before we take down the black sword, they shouldn't have any abnormalities. Whether or not we can obtain the inheritance, we'll have to rely on our own abilities. Lin Xuan turned around and said a few words to Lu Qianya, Chen Hanchuang, and Sun Yuan. Then he walked towards the stone stand in the east. Lu Qianya, Chen Hanchuang, and the others saw this and quickly followed him. On the other side, Duan Faya also sensed something and came to a realization. He led the disciples of Wind Flame Valley behind him and rushed in the direction of the stone stand. Not long after, they arrived 1,000 meters away from the stone stand. Most of the people who were at the front of the group were injured. Some of them were lying 1,000 meters away, while others were advancing with great difficulty. However, the distance between them and it was not even 100 meters. Lin Xuan shook his head slightly and stepped in an instant. His expression became serious, and a gravitational force that was twice as strong as before came crashing down. He also felt his body sink. His physique was so strong that even many spiritual essence stage warriors might not be able to compare to him. If even he had such a feeling, it was no wonder that those martial practitioners from before were so weak. However, this only caused him to be slightly surprised. It did not affect him much. Lin Xuan paused for a moment. His hot gaze swept across the group of puppets a couple hundred meters away before continuing forward. Behind him, Lu Qianya, Chen Hanchuang, Sun Yuan, and the others also felt the change in gravity, and their hearts were greatly shaken. However, when they saw Lin Xuan leap forward as if nothing had happened, they gritted their teeth and followed him. Not far away, Duplication's expression became even uglier when he saw this. However, in order to not lose face and for the sake of the inheritance of the secret realm, he forced himself to be on par with Lin Xuan. Lin Xuan sneered and ignored him. His target wasn't the inheritance of the black sword. It was a spatial talent. In his opinion, no matter how high the grade of the inheritance was, as long as he continued to advance, it would not be difficult for him to obtain treasures similar to the inheritance. However, space talent was different. It involved two great supreme-level spatial laws. It was very precious. Lin Xuan estimated that even if he went to the entire continent, he might not be able to see the spatial talent again. In comparison, spatial talent was naturally more important. Soon, they arrived within 300 meters of the stone stand. Lin Xuan was the first to step in. This is bad. Lin Xuan's expression changed. He felt as if a huge mountain was pressing down on him. At this moment, the gravity increased several times. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, this was only an unexpected situation. After Lin Xuan stabilized his body, he was able to bear it. However, his expression was no longer calm. Instead, it became serious. He felt that the air in front of him was as thick as ink. Every step he took was extremely difficult. His speed had also sharply decreased. His current speed was not even comparable to that of an ordinary person. Duplication, who was not far from him, fell to the ground and made a small pit on the ground. Despite the strength of his physique, he was not injured. However, his entire body was covered in dirt, and he was in a deeply sorry state. Behind him were Chen Hanchuang, Lu Qianya, and the others. They were also 300 meters away from Lin Xuan, 200 meters away. With such a gap, it was obvious who was stronger. When the crowd behind them saw this scene, they were extremely shocked as they began to discuss in low voices. Do I see things? Lin Xuan is actually more relaxed than Duplication. It should be that Duplication did not notice the change in gravity, so he suffered a small loss. But this means that Lin Xuan's physique is very likely stronger than Duplication's. Even if he is not stronger than Duplication, he is definitely not much weaker. Duplication is the top genius of Scorching Sun domain, second only to the 4 young masters. He has almost no weaknesses. Lin Xuan, who is only 20 years old, is now highly likely to surpass him. I really can't believe this. Lin Xuan is really strong. Could he be a master-level genius again? The crowd was in an uproar, and they couldn't help but cry out in shock. Their hearts were filled with shock. At this moment, Lin Xuan's performance had already surpassed Duplication's. As one of the top geniuses of the Scorching Sun domain, Duplication was incredibly famous. They had never heard of anyone who could be compared to him except for the 4 young masters. Duplication even had an undefeated record when fighting an enemy with the strength of a spiritual essence stage. Lin Xuan, who appeared to be younger than 20 years old, had now actually overtaken him. How could they not be astounded by this? Everyone was extremely shocked. They sighed in their hearts. They estimated that another master-level genius would appear in Scorching Sun domain. However, Lin Xuan didn't pay any attention to them. At this moment, all his attention was focused on the spatial talent of these dummies. After that, Lin Xuan started his attack. Although his speed was far slower than before, and he couldn't even reach 1m/s, it wasn't considered too slow either. And Lin Xuan's direction wasn't in the direction of the stone stand. Instead, he was heading in the direction of the nearest puppet. Although these puppets looked messy and disorderly, if someone were to see them carefully, he would find that there was still a pattern within them. That is, when all the puppets were connected, they would be able to connect to a winding path. However, this path was more than 10 times longer than the path that led straight to the stone stand. Ordinary martial artists would not pay attention to this matter. Lin Xuan paid no attention to it and continued along this winding path. Behind him, 300 meters away, Duplication heard the sounds of discussion and his face darkened. He looked at Lin Xuan's back and let out a cold snort. His eyes were filled with killing intent. He wanted to continue moving forward. He wanted to surpass Lin Xuan and regain his dignity. Unfortunately, Duplication was extraordinarily strong. He could even withstand dozens of attacks from Spiritual Essence Stage Level 1. In the end, he was still in the Spirit Opening stage and couldn't compare to the true Spiritual Essence stage. Furthermore, with the help of the Golden Scale Barbaric Elephant Arts, Lin Xuan's physique was even stronger than many early Spirit Opening stages. Putting aside their combat strength for the time being, the strength of their physique was on a completely different level. Especially when they were within 300 meters of the stone stand, the gravity increased exponentially, and the gap between their physiques was extremely obvious. No matter how hard Duplication tried to urge his spiritual energy and concept, it was completely useless. His speed of advancement was several times slower than Lin Xuan's. Duplication's expression became even gloomier.